Hello everyone, my name is Sordy and this is part 1 of the Ultimate Trackmania guide. This episode will cover general driving skills. If you're new and haven't watched part 0 yet, check it out if you want to learn more about menus and settings and the like. In this guide I'm not only going to focus on certain tricks or techniques, but also on the fundamentals of driving and driving lines, and trying to teach you how to know when to take which lines and how to know that you're not taking the right line. Now let's get in game and see what our car can do. And for this, I'll be going into Create, Track Editor, and creating a new track with mouse and keyboard, as I'm on PC. We'll take the Advanced Editor so we have access to all the blocks possible. So this is the Track Editor. Basically every track consists of a list of blocks, which are down here. You can try placing some down yourself as well if you want to try out everything that exists. But for now, I've made this very simple track with just the start block, some finish blocks, and some road platform to connect them. So let's take a look at what our car can do. If I press enter here, I'll go where my mouse is. And on the right hand side you can see my controls. So we have 3 main modes of changing our car. You can either gas, do a brake, or steer. So you can see that the steering can actually be anywhere from 0 to 100% steering. And usually when people talk about smooth steering, which we'll cover today as well, that means that they're not fully steering. On keyboard you can also do this by having action keys. So if I press my action key 1 here, you can see that my steering is now locked to 20% steering. It can be very helpful for places where you might be precise, or some certain tricks where smooth steering might help you. Also good to know is that if I reset my action key, which you do by pressing action key 5, you can also reset it by simply doing the same action key again. So if I press action key 3 here, which is 3 on my keyboard, you can see it's locked to 60%. Now if I press action key 3 again, I'm now again full steering. Now because of these, the gas and brake not being analog, it is advised to rebind, if you're playing a controller, rebind these gas from your R2 or your triggers to your bumpers, so you can switch these on and off quicker. Let's take a look at the different services that Trackmania has to offer. I've ordered them here from most grippy to least grippy. So we start out on roads. You can steer here without any issues, you won't be sliding, you have decent acceleration. Then you get the dirt, you have less grip. So you immediately start sliding if you start steering too hard. You have grass, it's very similar to dirt. It has a little bit less grip than dirt, it's a bit more slidey. And you have plastic. Plastic is even more slidey than the other 2 surfaces, but has more acceleration than even road. And also if you crash against plastic, you will not get a speed penalty, you will simply bounce back off. And lastly, we have the somewhat hated ice. Grip is thrown out of the window and your car is basically sliding all over the place. So for the videos we'll be tackling road first, then dirt and grass and plastic in one video, because they are very similar, and then ice in its own separate video. Now let's talk gears for a second. I won't go into too much detail in this video, I'll be going into more detail in the sliding surfaces video, but basically the Trackmania car has 5 gears. You can check them out and the lights in the back of your car. So you have 100, now 1 light, 162, 2 lights, 235, 4th light, and finally 342, the last light. And now you're in gear 5, and I can go as fast as I can. I will never go into gear 6 because it does not exist. Now usually you don't have to pay much attention to gears. However, if you are sliding while you're gearing up, this will result in a slowdown. This is also known as a gear down, where you lose speed because of a gear change. So let's take a look. First I want you to listen to the revs. You can see as you get higher into the gear, the amount of revs increase. And you hear a higher pitch noise. And just before you hit that highest pitch noise, you want to make sure that you are not sliding. For example, if I do slide, listen to the engine. You can hear it far away. If you compare it to a normal gear up, go back to gear 3, by sliding a lot. It falls into place, so to say. But, however, if you get a gear down, you kind of hear it fall away. So if you hear this sound, try to avoid it by listening to the engine. Maybe you're turning and then quickly going straight by tapping the other side, also known as counter steering, and then you'll be able to have a lot more speed. I'll go into a bit more detail in this in the sliding section, but this is applicable for every surface, even roads. For example, if you're drifting and you have a gear up, you have the exact same problem. Before we start talking about driving lines, I want to take a look at the different cameras that your car can have. The default camera here is camera 2. This follows your car quite closely, and it also tilts with you if you go up a ramp, for example. You have camera 1. This gives you a better overview. It's a bit higher, but it doesn't tilt with your car. So for example, if you go uphill, you might see a bit less. And lastly, we have cam 3, which is the cockpit view. And this is often used, for example, when you go upside down, like loopings or wall rides. Each of these cameras also has an alternate mode, so if you press it again, for example, cam 1 is a bit closer, same for cam 2. And for cam 3 it completely removes the car, so you see more. You also have cam 7, which is the free camera, and you can use this to freely explore the map and see what's everywhere. For this tutorial, we'll simply be using camera 1 for most parts, and maybe some camera 2 and 3 when the track requires it. Alright, so I've created a small track here. A simple start, into a booster or a turbo, into a tight corner, into a finish. So let's talk about driving lines. What are driving lines? Driving lines are basically the trajectory that your car takes throughout the corners of the map and the entire map itself. So for example, if I take my car here, I can go through the middle, I can hook this at the outside, go back to the middle, and then finish. Now this will probably not be the fastest driving line. So how do we determine what the fastest driving line is? To determine the fastest line, I like to look at it from above. Like this. Of course you cannot do this while you're driving, but you can imagine it in your head, and it will probably help you with thinking of the track in a more simple way. So what are the points of a driving line in the corner? You first have the entry, with the entry speed. Then you have the apex, which is basically the inside of your line throughout the corner. And then the exit, which is where your car will end up after the corner. So in every corner, you want to maximize your average speed throughout the corner. Make sure that you're exiting with a lot of speed as well, but still have the shortest line throughout the corner. So maximize the speed and minimize the path actually taken. So how do we do this? We do this by using all of the track possible. For example, if I go in game here, you'll see that because the boosters, we might have a lot of speed. If I just go straight, try to turn, I'll hit the wall, have 0 exit speed, and probably be very slow afterwards. Okay, so what if we slow down? We brake, take the corner. Okay, we didn't crash, we were a bit faster, but probably still not ideal. However, if we take the entire track, we go very first to the left, like that. Suddenly, we can make this corner in full speed. And full speed basically means that you're taking the corner without releasing the gas, which is also just known as releasing, or by drifting or braking. So you're simply steering, holding the gas, you're going through the corner, which usually means that you end up with the most exit speed. Okay, so I've changed the track a bit, and as you can see here, This corner you can easily make without doing anything. You don't have to drift, you don't have to release the gas, you don't have to go wide. So in cases like these where you can simply full speed the corner, your idea is to go as close as possible to the border. This will minimize your line. For example, if I go wide here, I go to finish with 4.9. And if I go close, very close, I'm half a second faster by simply going closer to the edge. Now sections like these, where you want to be as close to the edge as possible continuously, are also known as precision sections. I've changed the track again. It used to be a finish here, this is now all the way over here with a small ramp here. But you can see that the gap here is quite large. So let's start out with the original approach of just now, which is go as tight as possible. Okay, we go as tight. We barely take any part of the ramp. Okay, we're not jumping, that's not good. Let's try again. Let's take more of the ramp. So we go tight again, but we'll end up wide. Alright, better, not quite. So we start all the way on the left, take as much of the track as possible, go very wide, take all of the ramp, and we'll barely be able to make it. So in cases like these, it might not always be the way to go for the shortest path, if you cannot even make the corner, of course. So if you see yourself missing jumps, maybe being too slow, try going a bit wider, and see if you then make a jump. Alright, now a small exercise. What should our line be through these corners here? I'll let you think a bit. So our line should be, we go here, we go as tight as possible with a direct line to this corner here, because this will be the shortest part to the next part of the track. Then we do a similar thing here, we take the shortest path possible, while still making the corner full speed. Let's try that. So take the most direct line here, go a bit wide so you can steer early and end up very close to the corner, and you end up with a 6.22. Now let's say our line is a bit more sloppy. We don't take the shortest line, we go a bit here, we take a bit of a scenic route. Now suddenly you're 0.3 behind. We haven't crashed into anything, we haven't released the gas, we haven't braked. Just by taking a shorter line you can already save 0.3 if you take a very sloppy line. Now of course most tracks will not only be one corner. Here we have one very large corner into a smaller one. So how do you think we should take this one? So again the start will be the same. You go the shortest line to the booster. Again you go tight here. However, we no longer go straight. During this corner we already have to set up for the next corner. So the apex of this one will be the entry of the second corner. So all in all, we again take the shortest path, we go very tight, and this will be the inside of corner 1 and the entry of corner 2, which will then be wide. Then we take the apex here and the most direct line to the finish. Let's try that. So again the same start, go very tight, here as well, have a wide entry here, and we have to finish. Now what happens if we don't take the first corner as tight? You suddenly don't have the space here to make this corner. Like this, I'm bound to hit the wall. So during this corner you already have to be thinking about what the next corner will be, and adjust appropriately. Now so far we've only looked at corners that you've been able to make full speed. But what happens if you suddenly are too fast for a corner to take it full speed? Let's take a look at this track. Let's try to do the same at first. We go wide, we go tight, and we're crashing. Now that's usually not what you want. As whenever you crash, you will get an acceleration penalty. So for example, here I'm staying on the 200 to 210 range for a very long time before I finally start accelerating again. So you want to avoid the wall at all costs. How do we do that? It's still not working. Now for this, you can release the gas. This is also known as releasing. So what you do is you release the gas. So if you see here, I release, and I accelerate again. I'm able to make the full corner without crashing. And now the question of course becomes, when do you release and how much do you release? First let's start with the how much. Because that's just very simple, as little as possible. But how do you know that you've released as little as you could? Well, that's also when the when starts in. Because the sooner you release, the more you'll be able to steer. And you say, okay, why is that? Because if you release sooner, you will slow down earlier. And slowing down means that you'll be able to turn more, quicker. And therefore you'll be able to make the corner easier, and you have to release less. So let's put it into practice. Let's see what happens if I release early. I release basically on the entry and of the second corner, which is the apex of the previous one. And now let's see what happens if I go very late. I have to release a lot not to hit the wall. So I went at the finish with about 300 speed there. Do the same thing but release earlier. Probably entry. So I still released quite a bit there, but I went over the finish with 30 more speed. So how do you know whether or not your line was correct? You have to look at the corner and see if you used all of the track. So if you go into Cam 7 here, we have the entry of the corner here. So see if you're close to the entry here, close to the border. Your apex, see if you're close to here, and your exit, which is around here. So in corners where you're not able to full speed it, make sure you use all of the track. If you catch yourself not being able to be here, maybe you're all the way over here, that means you've probably released too much. So let's see. We go here. And this was a good corner. I end up at 360 speed over the finish. I had the right entry. I was close to the apex and I exited wide, making me have a lot of exit speed. Now if I do the same thing but release a bit too much, I even hit the inside of the apex there, and you see how much that cost me. Just touching the apex for a little bit just cut my speed in half basically. Let's try again. Okay, so I have like 345, and you saw in my first attempt my line was a lot closer to the borders, and even I exited in my last attempt, I exited around here, and my better attempt I was around here. And this means that I release better, which means releasing less. So using every bit of space you have, abuse it, and that'll make sure that you end up with the most speed possible. Now let's take everything we learned and apply it to a real track. Some of you have probably known this track, Spring 2023-21. This is a NASCAR track, so releasing is very important. A NASCAR is a style where you really want to maximize the average speed around the circuit by releasing in most corners that you cannot make. So let's take a look at the track. I'm just going to press forward to start, have some turbos. Now for first corner, let's go wide, go tight, and we'll make the corner full speed. Okay, that's a good start. Now let's take a look at the second one. Okay, maybe I was not tight enough here. No, this is not working. Okay, so let's take what we just learned. We have to release, and let's try to release early. Okay, that was pretty good. So as you could see, the most difficult part is usually determining where you want to be and what the corner is. So if we take the same thing as before, we take a look from the outside. You have the corner, which basically starts with the tightest part here, which is this wiggle here. Then a very shallow corner here. And our exit is all the way near the checkpoint. Okay, so this means you want to release around the entry here, just enough so you can make sure that you hit the just not hit the inside and just not hit the outside. If you see yourself doing that, you've done a good job, and it means you've had a lot of exit speed. Now let's do the same thing, but let's release a bit too much, so you can see what happens. We're gonna take the start a bit the same. Okay, I'm scared for NASCAR, so I'm releasing a lot. Now you see, immediately, in my other attempt, I landed around here as I magically go through the CP there. I went around here, while in my previous attempt I went around here. So just this difference can indicate that you're releasing too much. Of course, if you have the corner full speed, you don't have to worry about this because you're already having the most speed possible. But this is for corners where you cannot make this corner full speed. Let's look at the later part of the track here. This is around the end, and if you take a good line before the section, you'll end up at the bottom left here near the checkpoint. Now, what kind of lines do we take until the next checkpoint? Now let's take it from me, you can take this first part full speed. So this will be simply taking a tight line you don't have to release. However, the second part, you will not be able to full speed. So how do you take this? Well, first you have to determine kind of how the line looks. So as you can see here, as you see my headlights going here, you can see that this is a fairly shallow corner, which turns into a more tighter corner. So probably this tighter corner will be the issue. So then we have to go wide, release around the entry of this tighter corner here, go tight at the tight corner, and then exit wide again. So all in all, this will be wide, exit tight for this difficult section here, stay wide in order to set up for the second part of the corner here. The entry will be around here, release around that point, go tight, and exit wide again. If you hit all those points, you'll make sure that you have a lot of exit speed, which in turn makes your times better. So let's try that. Alright, so we've come to the corner. What do we do now? As you can see, if you start out wide, you can take this first corner full speed. So let's do the thing where we just go as tight as possible. Now here is where the trouble begins. Again, set up wide, release, as soon as you can and as low as you can. Right here, I'm going way too wide and that's not good. So we can release earlier. Alright, a bit better, we exited wide. Okay, that was decent. I still have a lot of space left on the exit, if you see what I mean. We go in cam 7 again. So take a look at the troublesome parts. This one with full speed, just turn left. Make sure you do exit or entry from the right side here. Then the entry or the exit of the first corner determines the entry of the next one. Then release as early as you can, with as little as you can. Go very tight to the corner here, and exit very wide at the checkpoint here. And then this you can full speed again, and it will be one lap. Now let's take a look at the world record and see what he does. So here we have Dopamine98 with the world record. And right here in the bottom left you see Ghost Scrubber. This is a plugin for Openplanet and it allows you to go through the replay as you want. So let's start. I'll be just looking at the corners. Okay, just full speed. Again, go wide here into a tight turn. Exit wide. Same thing here. Small release there to make sure to have a good exit here. So now the part we just looked at. I'll stop the replay here. So you see already the entries are very wide. Make sure to go tight for a good approach in the next turn. Releases very early and as little as possible, so he accelerates throughout of this part and exits very close to the corner here. This continues then, same idea, wide, a bit tight, and transitions to the next lap. Let's take a look at another track of the campaign, which is 11 of spring 2023. You can see that the same principle basically applies to any surface, with ice sometimes being an exception, where you want to go wide, then tight, and then wide again. So let's look at the Shadow Crancer here. Very tight. Something I do want to mention is you can see here he goes down very early. This is because if you go down early, it gives you more speed. If you were just going through a flat surface, this might not be the case. Right here, if you grab more height, so to say, grab it, it goes faster. Go very tight. We'll be talking about tubes like this one in another video. Exit wide, go very tight to the checkpoint. Very direct line to this wall right here. Also covering full video. Go wide, go tight to the first. So let's see here, this will be your first part of the corner. This is your first apex. Go a bit wide. Then this is your second apex right here. And a third even here. And exit a bit wide to keep your speed. So you can apply this principle to most tracks in the game. So, to conclude the cornering section of the guide, if you are able to make the corner full speed, go for it, always. If you are very low speed, go very inside, stay inside, this will allow for the shortest path. If you have to go wide to make the corner full speed, go for it, this will be worth it. If you are too fast for a corner, go outside, inside, outside, to use all of the track of that's possible, which will result in the most average speed. For the next part, let's take a look at transitions. Transitions is basically any part of the track which somehow disrupts the normal flow of the track. So this could be a surface change, for example, you could go from grass to road, or some kind of jump thing, for example maybe a ramp into another road piece. Let's first take a look at the transition of surfaces, because this is probably a bit easier. I'll show you this on Spring 2023 on 9, so the current campaign as of the making of the video. Let's look at it. It's just the first couple of seconds. So here, direct line, you can full speed this, we learned this. Now we go to plastic. Suddenly this surface has a lot less grip than road. So what do we do here? How do we maximize our potential here? Like if I steer too much on plastic, suddenly when I regain control on road, because it has more grip, I'll lose a lot of speed. And you can see that it's a wrong line, because if you keep steering to the right, you have a lot of space left, and that's what we learned. Use all of the track that is possible. So what you want to do is you want to minimize the steering on the plastic, or whatever surface has less grip, and maximize the steering on the other part. So as you can see here, I'm starting out already steering myself for the upcoming corner chicanes on the plastic by going to the left here. So I have to minimize steering on the plastic. And again, very minimize steering, and then only once I get to the road is when I start fully steering again. So take a look at that. For example here, my speed is 377 as indicated by split speeds. Now if I try to steer too much on the plastic just before the end, so the start is about the same, but I'm very aggressive on the steering here. 341, I'm already losing like 30 speed, which usually equals about 0.3 to the next checkpoint. So it's already a lot of speed lost right there. So once again, short line, steering on the road, as least as possible on the plastic, back to road, and we steer full again. same as here. However, if you do too little, we may hit one of these light poles here. So at that point what you can do is just before you hit the road, steer a bit so your car goes into a slide. We'll look a bit more into it in the next episode when we look into tech. But for now, make sure that you don't steer too much, because then you get this. Oh, this was actually quite good. We still have some space left. We could have steered a bit less. Let's say if we already start here. But you can see how much speed we're losing, and therefore we're losing not the track that we can use for speed. So simply this, a little bit wider, with a lot more speed. Go up high here, we'll talk about this in the full speed part. And also the slidey part. And then exit the track. So let's take a look at the world record. Let's take a look at what the shadow cruncher is doing again. But here, shortest line. Steer on the road and as least as possible on the plastic. Turn here, again, steer very little. Only once you reach the road, like look at how much of the track he's using. Beautiful. Like here, go high here to make the banking of the turn help you with getting the turn. And then a weird trick to the finish. Okay, let's take a look at some normal transitions. When people talk about transitions, they mostly mean jumps from one part of the track to another. But before we have to take a look at that, we first have to look at air control. Because you can change your car in the air. You have three ways to do this. You can brake, you can release the gas, or you can steer. Let's look at all three of them. So let's start with the most simple one, which is air braking. Air braking is when you tap your brake in the air. So let's see if I do nothing. You can see my car is kind of slowly tilting forward. However, what happens if we tap brake immediately after we leave this ramp up here? You can see that the car stays in this upright position. This can be very helpful when you want to align yourself with the road below. Here, tap brake, the car is now stuck. The second part is steering. So if you do this, you can see that my car keeps going to the right, keeps spinning, but you can counter this spin by steering the other way, also known as counter steering. So you see, my car now slowly stopped spinning in the middle of the air. Try it again, go right. Once I stop steering right and go left, my car also stops spinning. Again, for alignment this is very good to have. Maybe you do want to keep spinning, and then you have to make sure that you do not counter steer. And the last part, this even works for barrel rolls. For example, if I keep steering left, you'll see that I just keep rolling. If I steer right, I'm now stuck in the air. Not the ideal position you want to land in, but if you want it, you can. And the last part of air control is when you simply release the gas. So let's look at this. I land around like the last block that's placed here. However, if I release mid-air, you can see my car kind of has these flaps going off, and I land a lot earlier. This can be very useful if you want to make some kind of jump earlier. For example, this. We use two techniques at once. First we release so we land earlier, and afterwards we steer the other way so that our car is now aligned with the track. Okay, so now that we know how to do some air control, we can actually apply this. So how do you optimize transitions? There's two parts to this. There's one, minimizing airtime, and second part is having a good alignment for the next turn. So let's first look at minimizing airtime. Let's see, I go very high. You can see that my car is not accelerating. Yeah, I'm just flying, hoping that gravity brings me down. It takes a very long time. Now what happens if I go very low? I'm now accelerating on the rope much quicker. I land quicker, I accelerate quicker, and also have a slightly shorter line. So this is basically what you want to do in every track ever. Minimize your time spent in the air, because time spent in the air is not time spent accelerating. The perfect example of where to optimize the transition is the start of Fall 2022-07. It starts off with a bunch of boosters and a big jump into the next part, so the transition. If you just full speed this, let's see what happens. We go over the checkpoint with about 278 speed. Alright. So let's try to minimize our airtime. And here, release a tiny bit so we land earlier. You already see I'm almost 10 speed ahead already, just by releasing. Which sounds counterintuitive, you're releasing the gas, but you are landing earlier, more acceleration, more speed, more better. Everyone's happy. Now the same principle applies that we had earlier. If you can release earlier, do it. Of course you don't want to release too early, because then you'll lose speed across a big part of the track. But right here, if you release just before a jump, it'll generally be faster than if you release in the air. Let's take a look at that. Right there. Landed early, which got me extra airtime, but I actually gained speed. Let's try the same thing as before. We release in the air. We had a bit of an overjump, but we're still faster than the original way. Now I also want to mention the float trick. This is an advanced trick, so if you don't get it immediately, don't worry. But this is a way of changing the way your car behaves in the air before actually doing the jump. So let's see how it looks again. As you've seen before, our car kind of goes up and then slowly down. However, if you steer before you hit the end here, you can kind of change the way that your car behaves. So let's take a look at that. You see the difference. My car now very quickly starts going downward. And you do this by doing a right-left. So you go right, you go left. I also did another right. And then releasing the steering just before you leave the ramp. And then using this, you can make your car front wheels basically hit this part. You cannot see it very well. You can make them hit the ground just a bit earlier, because as long as at least one of your wheels is touching the ground, you will have just full acceleration. So people will do the weirdest things just to have a fraction of a second earlier ground contact, just to make the car a bit quicker afterwards. Now let's show you where you can actually apply all these air control tricks. If I go to the Trackmania World Tour stage and go to Airwalk, I'll drive to the part I'm mentioning. It's fairly early in the map. Here again, the white, tight white also applies. Minimize steering on plastic. Use the road for all your steering. And then you have this transition here. You have a bumper that bounces you into the next part. So here we can actually use all three techniques. We can use the air brake, we can use a small release, and we can steer. Let's first talk about the air brake part. We want the air brake as fast as possible. Now why is this? You see, after this corner, we do want to set up for, after this transition, we want to set up for this turn immediately, as you basically land in a turn already. However, in order for the car to turn, it has to have all four wheels on the ground. So let's see what happens if I just let my car do its thing. You know, we're kind of tilted. You see that we're bouncing. Like, it takes a long time before our car properly turns to the right. So what you then do is you air brake as fast as possible to minimize the bouncing. You see here, air brake quick, you gain grip, all four wheels, and we're able to turn. So that's part one. Air braking You want to align yourself with the road you're landing on below in order to gain grip as fast as possible to make the turn. Then the second part is that we're steering, because if we would not steer, our car would simply keep rotating or spinning to the right. And that's not what we want, because then we'll land we're landing way too much to the right, and we won't be able to keep a lot of speed. So this is a combined air brake, steer to the left, our car's now properly right with the corner, and we're able to make it. I had to redrive here because I went through the checkpoint. The last part is now releasing. Because it is such a big jump, if we were able to land earlier, we'll be able to generate more speed again. So let's do that as well. Air brake, release, steer to the left, everything is complete. And it was an okay turn. I ended up spinning too much, which made me lose speed, but you get the point. So here we have the second part of Airwalk, which has a drift, which we'll be talking about later, and this transition right here. 2 bumpers into just a straight road piece. So what do you want to do here? You can air brake, so you are aligned with the road. Or what you can do is just let the car do its thing, so you'll be very tilted. The difference here will be quite minimal, but what many people are doing is if you don't have to steer afterwards, what you do is you make the car have ground contact as soon as possible. So in this case that will be not air braking at all, and you see that my front tires are hitting the road earlier than if I would just air brake. The difference is very minimal, but if there's a bigger transition, they can give you like 3 or 4 more speeds, which is not much, but in Trackmania every 100 counts. See here, I personally did not do this. My wheels hit the ground early, and be able to have a lot of speed. Okay, and now that we know something about air control, let's also look at reducing airtime in other parts of the map. For example, here in start of fall 2212, you can see I'm somehow 3 speed behind and almost 700 on my PB. So what is my PB doing different here? Isn't this just, you know, go forward and easy? Well no, because we have some airtime. Now how can you reduce this airtime? Because the airtime you have it here on this first part, and here a very tiny bit as well. And the way you mitigate this is by going left right or right left. So your car goes diagonally across the problematic part here as well. This way you reduce the airtime and keep a lot more speed compared to when you would just grab the airtime. Of course this is a lot more risky. If you make a mistake you'll probably end up losing a lot of time. But if you really want to optimize the last couple of hundreds or tenths, these can be very worth a try. Okay, so now that we know everything basic about driving cars in Trackmania, let's take a look at how you can analyze your own runs and see what you can improve. Now, for now I'll just be using the clip access functionality, which is we have to watch your runs here. But later I'll also show you a way how to do that with standard access. So let's look at my own run. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna analyze every corner and every transition and see what could be done better. Right, so this is my run from about 2 years ago, back when I started playing Trackmania a bit more. Let's see how it looks like. Okay, so this is a good start. We got some direct lines into the turbo. Transition into the road here. You'll notice I could have done a flow trick there. World record probably does that, but this isn't that important. We set up kind of wide for the upcoming turn. Avoid the airtime there. Okay, we're in the middle of the road here. Maybe we could be a little bit more to the left, so have a wider approach, which will make the exit a bit more tight, because as you can see, back, this right here will be your apex, very close to here. And I'm missing that by like 2.5 car lengths. So it could be, our line's a lot more wide, and therefore losing a bit of time. You could also, right here I'm missing the apex by 1,000,000 cars. You could go through those pillars there and go very tight here. Okay, good setup here. Very close to the border, so that's a good entry. Small release here. Let me hide my PB ghost so you can see the inputs. Right here, small release. Very early, so that's good. Go very tight here, so that's also good. Do a tight exit. In theory, this could be a bit better. But I have some space left, but it's not much, so it's pretty good. Small release in order to reduce the airtime. Good position. Also, a small steering to the left, so we have a good angle for the upcoming turn. Good apex, was pretty close. Could be a bit more to the left here, to have a more direct approach to this apex of the upcoming corner. A bit not too much to the left here. You could also even go inside here. So yeah. That way you can kind of go through each corner and see the rules that you've learned and apply them all and see if you're missing anything. Now let's take a look at the world record and see what Racestyle does better than me. Basically the same starting line. So I saw him go for the right-left trick, or left-right in his case, to tilt the car a bit and land just a tiny bit earlier. Racestyle actually grabs the apex here properly, so title line is better. Same thing here, also very close to the inside, very outside line, very close to the apex there, and a very wide exit, so he for sure has a lot more speed than I do here. Small release here, again, a much tighter end. Also things you can do is go to a certain landmark. For example, I want to know that the speed here is very important. So let's look at the speed just as you hit the exit of this turn. 456 about. Now let's go to my own run. I have 440 as my car is wiggling like hell. So I'm losing like, let's say 10 to 15 speed already, and that is a lot if you look at the upcoming part. You probably maybe also saw that the world record actually landed straight here, so that means less sliding and more speed. Take a look at that again. Land straight, barely slides, and is able to make the turn full speed. Do beautiful things. Now if you don't have club access, you are still able to watch replays. If you go to create replay editor, you can select replay here and see how it looks like. You can download these from Trackmania.exchange. What you can also do, this I think even works if you have free access. You can go to settings, and on profile here you have activate a key. In the description, I'll leave a link to a list of keys that you can activate. And with these links, with these keys, you can activate someone's VIP ghost. So for example, I copy-pasted Granadi's key, VIP key. Press enter. And it asks you like, oh, you want to activate this? And then, okay. And then if I go to any campaign map, or any map that driver has driven, what you can do is when you have the screen, you can go to more opponents, and then under the global VIPs, the copy-pasted key will appear here. So there'll be keys for Scrappy, Gennady, Virtual, and whatever track they drive you can select here. And you can race against them. But here I have FPB and Gennady driving next to it. And that way you can kind of follow them, see where they go wide, where they go tight, where they drift, everything. That way you can also kind of look at what they do and see if that can be implemented in your own runs. That was everything I wanted to say about general driving skills. With these skills you should be able to conquer most normal maps and try to optimize them. If you think I missed something, have something to add onto what I've mentioned, or simply have a question, don't hesitate to leave a comment. Next episode we'll be talking about tech, which is a style where many of the corners are taken with drifting lines instead of normal release lines. See you next time!